The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting golden rays over Lincoln Park. It was one of those afternoons where time seemed to slow down, and the world felt peaceful. Families strolled along the winding paths, children laughed as they chased each other around the playground, and couples sat on benches enjoying quiet conversations. The park buzzed with life, a small sanctuary tucked away from the noise of the city. Eric pulled his patrol car into the parking lot at the edge of the park. He wasn't officially on duty anymore, he'd just finished an exhausting shift, but something about this place always made him feel uneasy. Maybe it was the mix of people who came here, or maybe it was the way some of them looked at him when he drove by. Whatever it was, Eric couldn't shake the feeling that trouble lurked beneath the surface. He stepped out of his car, adjusting his belt as he scanned the area. His eyes landed on a man sitting alone on a bench near the playground. The man was tall and muscular, with dark skin and a shaved head. He wore sunglasses and a black tank top that showed off his arms, which were covered in tattoos. To Eric, the man looked tough, almost intimidating. And then there was the resemblance. Something about the way the man carried himself reminded Eric of Vin Diesel, the actor. Eric frowned. "What's someone like that doing here?" he muttered under his breath. He didn't know why, but he felt certain the man didn't belong. Something about the scene didn't sit right with him. Without thinking too much about it, Eric started walking toward the bench. Marcus leaned back against the wooden slats of the bench, soaking in the warmth of the sun. He loved coming to Lincoln Park whenever he had free time. It reminded him of growing up in a neighborhood not far from here, where kids played outside until the streetlights came on and everyone knew each other's names. This park was a little slice of that simpler time, a place where he could relax and forget about the stresses of adulthood for a while. As he sat there, Marcus noticed a police officer approaching. At first, he didn't think much of it. Cops came through the park all the time, it wasn't unusual. But as the man got closer, Marcus realized something was different. The officer's posture was stiff, his jaw clenched tightly, and his hand hovered near the gun on his hip. There was no smile, no casual nod of acknowledgement, just suspicion. "Hey," the officer said sharply, stopping a few feet away. "What are you doing here?" Marcus blinked, caught off guard by the abrupt question. "I'm just sitting," he replied calmly, removing his sunglasses so he could look the officer in the eye. "Is there a problem?" The officer, Eric, crossed his arms over his chest. "You live around here?" "No," Marcus said honestly. "But I come here sometimes." "It's a nice park." Eric raised an eyebrow. "Nice? You call this nice? Look at these benches, they're falling apart. And half the lights don't even work at night." Marcus shrugged. "It's still a good spot to unwind. Besides, it's better than staying cooped up inside all day." Eric didn't seem convinced. He glanced around, as if searching for evidence to support whatever theory he had formed in his mind. "So you're telling me you just randomly decided to hang out here today? No special reason?" "Nope," Marcus said, keeping his tone light. He could tell this conversation was going somewhere uncomfortable, but he didn't want to give Eric any excuse to escalate things. "Just needed some fresh air." Nearby, Lisa paused mid-step as she walked her golden retriever, Max. She had been lost in thought, listening to the distant chatter of children and the rustling leaves, when she noticed the tension between Marcus and the officer. Curious, she slowed down and watched from a short distance. Lisa had seen interactions like this before. As a teacher at a local elementary school, she often heard stories from her students about being stopped or questioned because of how they looked. She hated seeing authority figures abuse their power, especially in situations where it clearly wasn't warranted. Something about the way Eric was speaking to Marcus set off alarm bells in her head. Back on the bench, Eric was growing, more frustrated. Marcus's calm demeanor only fueled his irritation. "You expect me to believe you're just hanging out in this part of town? Come on, man. Be straight with me." Marcus sighed. "I am being straight with you. I'm not hiding anything. If you have a specific concern, go ahead and say it." Eric hesitated. Deep down, he knew he didn't have a valid reason to accuse Marcus of wrongdoing. But his gut told him something was off, and he trusted his instincts more than logic. Fine, he said finally. Let's see some ID. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He flipped it open to reveal his driver's license and firefighter credentials. Holding them up, he said, "Here, happy now?" Eric took the items reluctantly, glancing at the photo and information. Sure enough, everything checked out. Marcus Johnson, age 32, address listed as downtown. Even his occupation matched what he'd claimed earlier. Still, Eric couldn't let it go. Firefighter, huh? That doesn't explain why you're hanging around here instead of working. It's my day off, Marcus explained patiently. And last I checked, sitting in a public park isn't illegal. By now, Lisa had moved closer, unable to stay silent any longer. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. Both men turned to look at her. "Is there a reason you're giving him such a hard time? He hasn't done anything wrong." Eric scowled. "This is none of your business, ma'am. Please keep moving." But Lisa stood her ground, tightening her grip on Max's leash. "Actually, it is my business when I see someone being treated unfairly. Why don't you focus on actual crimes instead of harassing innocent people?" Her words hung in the air, drawing the attention of several bystanders. A few parents exchanged glances, murmuring quietly among themselves. Eric shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of how many eyes were on him. For a moment, he considered doubling down, insisting that he was just doing his job. But something in Lisa's expression stopped him, a mixture of defiance and disappointment that hit him harder than he expected. Marcus broke the silence. "Look," he said evenly, addressing Eric. "I'm not trying to cause any trouble. I'm just here to enjoy the day. If you've got questions, ask them, but don't treat me like a criminal because of how I look." For the first time since arriving, Eric found himself at a loss for words. He stared at Marcus, then at Lisa, and finally at the growing crowd watching the exchange. The weight of the situation pressed down on him, forcing him to reconsider his approach. Reluctantly, he handed Marcus's ID back and muttered, "Okay, fine, just stay out of trouble." With that, Eric turned and walked briskly back to his patrol car, leaving Marcus and Lisa standing in awkward silence. As soon as he was gone, Lisa exhaled deeply, letting some of the tension leave her body. "Are you okay?" she asked, turning to Marcus. Marcus nodded, though his expression remained guarded. "Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for stepping in. Not many people would have done that." Lisa smiled faintly. "Someone has to. We can't let this kind of behavior slide." They chatted briefly before parting ways, both aware that the encounter had left a mark, not just on them, but on everyone who had witnessed it. For Marcus, it was another reminder of the challenges he faced simply because of who he was. For Lisa, it reinforced her determination to speak up when she saw injustice. And for Eric, driving away from the park, it planted a seed of doubt that would linger long after the sun had set. As Eric drove away from Lincoln Park, his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. His knuckles turned white, and his jaw clenched so hard it ached. He replayed the scene in his mind over and over again, the calm way Marcus had responded, Lisa's sharp words cutting through the tension, and the silent judgment of the bystanders who had watched him question an innocent man. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Why did everyone have to make such a big deal out of nothing? Eric muttered to himself, his voice low but filled with frustration. I was just doing my job. If I don't ask questions, how am I supposed to keep people safe? But deep down, a small part of him knew that wasn't entirely true. He hadn't approached Marcus because he suspected criminal activity. There had been no evidence, no reason to believe anything was wrong. Instead, it was Marcus's appearance, his size, his tattoos, his resemblance to someone famous, that had triggered Eric's suspicion. And now, thanks to Lisa's intervention and the growing crowd, he felt humiliated. Back at the park, Marcus stayed on the bench for a while longer, trying to shake off the encounter. He had dealt with situations like this before, but they never got easier. No matter how polite or cooperative he was, some people still saw him as a threat simply because of how he looked. It was exhausting, and it left him feeling drained. Lisa lingered nearby, unsure whether she should leave or check on Marcus again. She could tell he was upset even though he tried to hide it. Finally, she walked over and sat down on the bench beside him. Max wagged his tail lazily, sensing her unease. "You sure you're okay?" Lisa asked softly, breaking the silence. That guy was way out of line. Marcus nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'll be fine. Stuff like this happens sometimes. You get used to it after a while." Lisa frowned. "You shouldn't have to get used to it. Nobody should." Marcus shrugged. "It is what it is. Some people see what they want to see no matter what you say or do. That cop probably thinks he's protecting the neighborhood by targeting guys like me." Lisa shook her head, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "That's not protection. That's prejudice. And it's not fair to you or anyone else." They sat there quietly for a few minutes, watching the world go on around them. Children laughed as they played tag near the swings, and a couple strolled by hand in hand. To most people, it seemed like any other peaceful afternoon in the park. But for Marcus and Lisa, the earlier confrontation cast a shadow over everything. Later, that evening, Eric sat alone in his apartment, staring at the wall. The TV was on, but he wasn't paying attention to it. His mind kept circling back to the events at the park. He couldn't stop thinking about Lisa's words. "Why don't you focus on actual crimes instead of harassing innocent people?" Her accusation gnawed at him, making him feel defensive and guilty all at once. He tried to justify his actions to himself. "She doesn't understand," he said aloud, as if arguing with an invisible opponent. "She doesn't know what it's like to walk into a situation where you don't know who's dangerous and who isn't. You can't take chances when lives are on the line." But the excuses rang hollow even to him. He remembered the look on Marcus's face, the calmness that bordered on pity, and Lisa's unwavering glare. They hadn't backed down, and their confidence had unsettled him. For the first time in years, Eric allowed himself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he'd been too quick to judge. Across town, Marcus arrived home to find his wife, Angela, waiting for him in the living room. She looked up from her book when he walked in, immediately noticing the tension in his shoulders. "What's wrong?" Angela asked, setting the book aside. "You look like you've had a rough day." Marcus hesitated, then sighed. "Something happened at the park today. A cop stopped me, said he wanted to check if I was up to something. Turns out he didn't like the way I looked." Angela's expression darkened. "Again? Didn't you show him your ID last time this happened?" "I did," Marcus replied, sitting down heavily on the couch. "And I showed him my firefighter badge this time too. Still didn't matter. He wouldn't let it go until some woman stepped in and called him out." Angela reached over and took his hand. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Marcus said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "It's just tiring, you know? Every time I step outside, I have to wonder if someone's going to treat me like a criminal because of how I look. It makes me feel like I don't belong even in places I've been going to for years." Angela squeezed his hand. "You belong wherever you want to be. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." Marcus smiled weakly. "Thanks. I needed to hear that." The next morning, Lisa woke up early, unable to stop thinking about the encounter at the park. She had posted the photo she'd taken of Eric questioning Marcus on social media, along with a brief description of what had happened. By the time she checked her phone, the post had gone viral, sparking heated discussions online. Some commenters praised Lisa for standing up to the officer, calling her brave and saying the world needed more people like her. Others criticized her for interfering, claiming she didn't know the full story and accusing her of exaggerating the situation. The backlash didn't surprise her. It always came with speaking out, but it still stung. At work later that day, Lisa found herself distracted during class. Her third-grade students were working on a group project about community helpers, and one boy raised his hand eagerly. "Ms. Carter," he said, "what do police officers do?" Lisa froze for a moment, unsure how to answer. She wanted to tell her students the truth, that police officers were meant to protect and serve, But she also knew that wasn't always the reality. After a pause, she smiled warmly. Police officers, help keep our neighborhoods safe, she began carefully. But like anyone else, they aren't perfect. Sometimes they make mistakes, and it's important for us to hold them accountable when they do. The boy nodded thoughtfully. So they're like superheroes, but they can mess up too? Lisa chuckled. Exactly. Meanwhile, Eric decided to visit a local coffee shop to clear his head. As he waited in line, he overheard two women talking about the incident at the park. One of them mentioned seeing a viral post online and described how a police officer had harassed a firefighter without cause. Eric felt his stomach drop. He glanced around nervously, wondering if anyone would recognize him. When he finally got his coffee and sat down at a table, he pulled out his phone and searched for the post. Sure enough, it was everywhere. Comments ranged from outrage to disbelief, and several people had tagged the police department demanding answers. Eric scrolled through the thread, feeling increasingly trapped. For the rest of the day, he avoided looking at his phone, but the weight of the situation pressed down on him. He couldn't deny that he had acted poorly, and now the entire community knew about it. Whether he liked it or not, he would have to face the consequences. That night, Marcus and Angela sat together on their porch, enjoying the cool breeze. Marcus stared out at the quiet street, lost in thought. You know, he said suddenly, maybe something good will come out of this. People are talking about it, sharing stories. Maybe that cop will think twice before doing something like this again. Angela nodded. Change doesn't happen overnight, but every little bit helps. Marcus smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope. Yeah. And hey, at least I've got you to remind me I belong. Angela leaned her head on his shoulder. Always. Far away, Eric sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, scrolling through the endless comments online. Each word felt like a punch to the gut, forcing him to confront the ugly truth about his behavior. For the first time in a long time, he wondered if he truly deserved to wear the badge. The days that followed the incident at Lincoln Park were long and heavy for Eric. He tried to go about his routine, waking up early, getting dressed in his uniform, heading to work. But everything felt different now. The weight of what had happened lingered over him like a storm cloud, refusing to break. His colleagues noticed the change too. He was quieter than usual, avoiding eye contact during meetings and keeping to himself whenever possible. At first, Eric hoped the viral post would fade into obscurity. Social media moved quickly, after all, and people often forgot about one controversy as soon as another took its place. But this time it wasn't so simple. The department received dozens of calls and emails from concerned citizens asking for accountability. A local news station even picked up the story, airing an interview with Lisa, who described the encounter in detail. Her words were calm but firm, painting a clear picture of how Eric's actions had crossed a line. Eric watched the interview alone in his apartment, his hands trembling as he gripped the remote control. Lisa's voice echoed through the room, steady and unwavering. It's not just about one bad cop, she said. It's about a system that allows these kinds of interactions to happen again and again. We need to hold people accountable, not because they're bad people, but because we deserve better. Her final sentence hit Eric harder than anything else. Not because they're bad people. Did that mean she thought he could change? Or was she simply being polite on camera? Either way, her words planted a seed of doubt in his mind, a tiny flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, he still had a chance to fix things. Meanwhile, Marcus returned to his normal life, though the incident continued to weigh on him. At the fire station, his co-workers asked if he was okay when they saw him lost in thought during downtime. Marcus appreciated their concern, but didn't want to dwell on what had happened. Instead, he threw himself into his work, focusing on helping others and keeping busy. One afternoon, while cleaning out the equipment after a call, Marcus found himself talking to Danny, a younger firefighter who admired him greatly. Danny had seen the viral post and wanted to know how Marcus handled situations like that without losing his temper. I don't know, Marcus admitted, leaning against the truck. I guess I just try to remind myself that some people are scared of what they don't understand. It doesn't make it right, but it helps me stay calm. Danny nodded slowly. Still, I'd be mad if someone treated me like that. How do you keep going? Marcus smiled faintly. You lean on the people who care about you. Angela, my friends, even strangers like Lisa. They remind me that there's more good in the world than bad. And honestly, holding on to anger only hurts me in the end. Danny looked thoughtful. That's really smart. I don't think I could handle it as well as you do. You'd be surprised what you can handle when you have to, Marcus replied. But trust me, it's not easy. Lisa, on the other hand, found herself thrust into the spotlight. After her interview aired, she started receiving messages from people across the country, sharing their own stories of discrimination and profiling. Some thanked her for speaking out. Others offered advice or encouragement. While the support was heartwarming, it also came with criticism. A few commenters accused her of exaggerating the situation or seeking attention, and trolls flooded her inbox with hateful messages. Despite the negativity, Lisa refused to back down. She knew standing up for justice came with risks, but she believed it was worth it. One evening, as she scrolled through her phone, she stumbled upon a message from a woman named Rachel. "Thank you for doing what you did," Rachel wrote. "My son is 16, and he's been stopped by police multiple times for no reason. Seeing someone speak out gives me hope that things might get better someday." Lisa read the message several times, feeling tears well up in her eyes. She hadn't realized how much her actions meant to people like Rachel until that moment. Determined to keep pushing for change, Lisa decided to attend a community meeting organized by local activists. They planned to discuss ways to improve relations between law enforcement and residents, and Lisa wanted to be part of the conversation. Back at the police department, Eric's superiors called him into a private meeting. Captain Reynolds, a stern man with decades of experience, sat behind his desk, staring at Eric with a mixture of disappointment and concern. "This has gone far enough," Reynolds said bluntly. "We've got calls pouring in, and the chief is breathing down my neck. You need to address this, Eric, before it blows up any further." Eric swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in his throat. "What do you want me to do?" Reynolds leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "First, you're going to apologize, to the public, to the department, and most importantly to the man you harassed. Then you're going to attend mandatory diversity training sessions. If you refuse, you'll be suspended pending investigation." Eric opened his mouth to protest but quickly closed it. Arguing wouldn't help. Instead, he nodded reluctantly. "Okay, I'll do it." As he left the office, Eric felt a strange mix of relief and dread. On one hand, taking responsibility might ease the pressure building around him. On the other hand, apologizing to Marcus and facing the backlash from his peers felt like stepping into uncharted territory. Still, he knew he had no choice. It was either apologize or lose everything. Days later, Eric mustered the courage to visit Lincoln Park again. This time he wasn't wearing his uniform. Dressed in plain clothes, he walked cautiously along the familiar paths, searching for Marcus. When he spotted him sitting on the same bench where their confrontation had taken place, Eric hesitated. His heart raced and his palms grew sweaty. For a moment he considered turning around and leaving, but something inside him pushed him forward. "Hey," Eric said softly, stopping a few feet away. Marcus looked up, surprise flashing across his face. "Can we talk?" Marcus studied him for a moment before nodding. "Sure, have a seat." Eric lowered himself onto the bench, feeling awkward and out of place. He cleared his throat, struggling to find the right words. "Look, I owe you an apology. What I did the other day, it was wrong. I judged you based on how you look, and that's not fair. I let my biases get in the way, and I'm sorry." Marcus listened silently, his expression unreadable. When Eric finished, he waited for a response, bracing himself for anger or rejection. To his surprise, Marcus sighed and nodded. "I appreciate you saying that," Marcus said finally. "It takes guts to admit when you're wrong. But I hope you realize this isn't just about me. There are a lot of people who've been treated the way I was, and they don't always get an apology. So if you're serious about making things right, prove it. Show people you've changed. Eric nodded slowly, feeling a wave of determination wash over him. I will. I promise. Later that evening, Lisa attended the community meeting, where she met activists, residents, and even a few officers willing to listen. The discussion was heated at times, but everyone agreed on one thing: change was necessary. As Lisa listened to the ideas being shared, she couldn't help but feel hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, moments like the one in Lincoln Park could spark real progress. Across town, Marcus and Angela sat together on their porch, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. Despite everything that had happened, Marcus felt a sense of peace. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he also knew he wasn't alone. Together they could face whatever came next. In his apartment, Eric stared at the badge on his dresser, wondering if he truly deserved to wear it. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to dream of becoming the kind of officer people respected, not feared. It wouldn't happen overnight, but he was ready to take the first step. Eric's apology to Marcus marked the beginning of a long and difficult journey. It wasn't just about saying sorry, it was about proving that he meant it. For Eric, this meant stepping out of his comfort zone in ways he never imagined. He started attending diversity training sessions organized by the police department. Though at first he went reluctantly, the workshops were led by experts who shared stories of discrimination and prejudice, often inviting community members to speak about their experiences. At one session, a man named Daniel stood up to share his story. Daniel was a former soldier who had been racially profiled multiple times even after serving his country. His voice shook with emotion as he described how officers like Eric had pulled him over for no reason, searched his car without cause, and treated him as if he were a criminal. I came back from war ready to serve my community, Daniel said, looking directly at Eric. But instead of being welcomed home, I was treated like an outsider. You can't imagine what that feels like. Eric sat frozen in his chair, his face flushed with shame. He wanted to look away, but something in Daniel's eyes held his gaze. For the first time, he truly understood the impact of his actions, not just on individuals but on entire communities. When the session ended, Eric approached Daniel hesitantly. I'm sorry, Eric stammered. I don't know what else to say, but I want you to know I'm listening. I'll do better. Daniel studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. That's all anyone can ask for, just try to be better. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to go about his life, though he couldn't ignore the ripple effects of the incident. People recognized him around town, some stopping to thank him for staying calm during the confrontation. Others reached out online, sharing their own stories of bias and injustice. At first, Marcus didn't know how to respond. He wasn't used to being seen as a symbol of resilience or strength, but Angela encouraged him to embrace the role. You've always been someone who inspires people, she told him one evening. Why not use this moment to make a difference? So Marcus began speaking at local events, sharing his perspective as a firefighter and a black man navigating a world filled with stereotypes. His talks weren't fiery speeches. They were honest and heartfelt, focusing on empathy and understanding. He emphasized the importance of seeing people as individuals rather than judging them based on appearance. One day, after a talk at a high school, a student approached him. How do you stay so calm when people treat you unfairly? The boy asked. Marcus smiled warmly. It's not easy, he admitted. But I remind myself that anger won't change their minds. What changes things is patience, kindness, and showing them who I really am. The boy nodded thoughtfully. You're really brave. Marcus chuckled. Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are. Lisa, too, found herself more involved in the community than ever before. Her viral post had sparked conversations across the city, and she became a voice for accountability and reform. She joined a group of activists working to improve relations between law enforcement and residents. They organized forums, hosted workshops, and created programs aimed at fostering trust. One project Lisa spearheaded was a mentorship program pairing young people with officers willing to listen and learn. At first, many cops resisted the idea, fearing it would make them look weak or vulnerable. But Lisa persisted, explaining that true strength came from building connections. "You don't have to agree on everything," she told them, "but you do need to understand each other." That's where real change starts. Slowly but surely, some officers warmed up to the idea. One of them was Eric, who volunteered to participate despite his initial reservations. During one session, he met a teenager named Jamal, whose older brother had been arrested unfairly years ago. Jamal was hesitant to engage at first, glaring at Eric with suspicion. But over time they began talking about music, sports, and eventually, their shared frustrations with the system. "I'm not saying I trust you," Jamal said during one meeting, "but you seem different from the others." Eric nodded, grateful for the small victory. "I'm trying to be different, that's all I can promise." As weeks turned into months, Eric worked tirelessly to rebuild his reputation, not just within the department but in the community as well. He attended neighborhood meetings, listened to residents' concerns, and partnered with organizations focused on racial justice. Some people still distrusted him, and he didn't blame them. Trust, he realized, took time to earn. One evening, Eric decided to visit Lincoln Park again. This time, he wasn't there to patrol or question anyone. He simply wanted to sit and reflect. As he walked along the paths, he noticed Lisa sitting on a bench with her dog, Max. She looked up and spotted him, raising an eyebrow in surprise. "What are you doing here?" she asked cautiously. Eric shrugged. "Just thinking, trying to see this place through different eyes." Lisa studied him for a moment, then patted the space beside her. "Sit down." For a while they sat in silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Finally, Lisa spoke. "I saw you at the forum last week. You seemed sincere." "I am," Eric replied. "I know I messed up and I'll spend the rest of my career trying to fix it. I can't undo the past, but I can work toward a better future." Lisa nodded slowly. "That's all anyone can ask for. Just keep going." Back at the fire station, Marcus received unexpected news. Eric had nominated him for a community service award. The nomination highlighted Marcus's dedication to helping others both on and off the job. When Marcus heard about it, he was stunned. Why would he do that? Marcus asked Angela later that night. Angela smiled. "Maybe because he's learning. Maybe because he wants to show you he's serious about changing." Marcus thought about it for a moment, then grinned. "Well, I guess we're all capable of surprising each other." By the end of the year, things had shifted in subtle but meaningful ways. Eric's efforts earned him cautious respect from some residents, though others remained skeptical. Marcus continued inspiring people with his talks, reminding everyone that progress required patience and persistence, and Lisa stayed committed to her activism, believing that every small step mattered. Lincoln Park remained a symbol of hope, a place where differences could coexist peacefully if given the chance. For Eric, Marcus, and Lisa, it was also a reminder that change was possible, even in the most unlikely circumstances. Months had passed since the day Eric first confronted Marcus in Lincoln Park. The seasons had changed, bringing cooler air and golden leaves that crunched underfoot. For Eric, the transformation wasn't just in the weather, it was inside him. He had spent countless hours reflecting on his actions, attending workshops and listening to stories from people who had been hurt by prejudice. Slowly but surely, he began to see the world differently. One crisp morning, Eric volunteered at a local youth center, mentoring kids after school. It was part of a new initiative aimed at bridging gaps between law enforcement and the community. At first, Eric felt out of place among the energetic teenagers, unsure of how to connect with them. But as he showed up consistently week after week, the kids started warming up to him. They played basketball, worked on art projects, and shared meals together. Over time, Eric realized these moments weren't just about teaching, it was about learning too. One afternoon, while helping a group of boys paint a mural, Eric struck up a conversation with Jamal, the same teenager he'd met through Lisa's mentorship program. Jamal was now one of the most active participants at the center, often leading activities or offering ideas for new projects. "You've been coming here a lot," Jamal said, dipping his brush into a can of blue paint. "Why?" Eric paused, thinking carefully before answering. "Because I want to be better, not just as a cop, but as a person. I used to think I had all the answers, but I didn't. Now I'm trying to listen more." Jamal nodded thoughtfully. "That's cool. Just don't stop showing up, okay?" "I won't," Eric promised. And for the first time, he truly believed it. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to inspire those around him. His talks had gained popularity, drawing larger crowds each time. People came not only to hear his story, but also to learn how they could contribute to creating a fairer society. Marcus never claimed to have all the solutions. He simply encouraged others to take small steps toward kindness and understanding. During one event, a young woman named Sarah approached him afterward. She looked nervous, clutching a notebook tightly in her hands. "I've been wanting to do something," she confessed, "but I don't know where to start. Everything feels so overwhelming." Marcus smiled warmly. "Start small," he advised. "Talk to someone different from you. Listen to their story. Sometimes that's enough to make a difference." Sarah nodded, looking relieved. "Thank you. That helps." As Marcus watched her walk away, he felt a sense of pride. Change didn't happen overnight, but every conversation mattered. Lisa remained deeply involved in her activism work, though she faced challenges along the way. Some critics accused her of being too idealistic, while others dismissed her efforts as insignificant. But Lisa refused to let negativity deter her. She knew progress took time, and she was determined to keep pushing forward. One evening, Lisa organized a community dinner at Lincoln Park, inviting residents, activists, and officers, including Eric, to come together and share a meal. The event was simple yet powerful, with long tables set up beneath strings of twinkling lights. As people mingled, laughter and conversation filled the air. At one point, Lisa stood up to speak. "This park has seen its share of struggles," she began, her voice steady. "But tonight, we're choosing to focus on connection instead of division. We may not agree on everything, but we can still find common ground. Let's use this moment to remind ourselves that change is possible when we work together." Her words resonated with everyone present, including Eric, who sat quietly at a nearby table. He glanced around at the diverse crowd, families, friends, strangers, and felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could get better. The following week, Eric decided to visit Lincoln Park again. This time, he didn't go alone. He invited Marcus to join him, hoping to continue their earlier conversation. When they met near the bench where their journey had begun, there was an unspoken understanding between them. "Thanks for meeting me here," Eric said, sitting down. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said before, that apologies aren't enough unless you prove them. I wanted to show you that I'm serious about making a difference." Marcus nodded, studying Eric's expression. "I believe you are. You've already done a lot, Eric. Keep going." They talked for a while, sharing thoughts about the future and how they could both contribute to positive change. By the end of their conversation, Eric felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew he couldn't erase the past, but he could shape the future, one step at a time. Back at home, Angela noticed a change in Marcus. He seemed lighter, more at peace. One night, as they sat together on the porch, she asked him what had shifted. "It's hard to explain," Marcus replied, gazing at the stars. "I guess I've accepted that I can't control how people see me, but I can control how I respond. And seeing people like Eric try to change, it gives me hope." Angela smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "That's beautiful. You've always been someone who brings light to dark places." Marcus chuckled softly. "Well, if I can help even one person see things differently, then it's worth it." In the months that followed, Lincoln Park became a hub of unity and collaboration. Community members organized regular cleanup days, turning the once neglected space into a vibrant gathering spot. Officers like Eric joined in, working side by side with residents to plant flowers, fix broken benches, and repaint faded playground equipment. For Eric, these small acts of service were transformative. They reminded him why he had become a police officer in the first place, to protect and serve. And for the community, they represented a fresh start, a chance to rebuild trust and foster mutual respect. One sunny afternoon, as Eric helped install a new swing set, Lisa walked by with Max. She stopped to watch for a moment, then called out, "Looks like you're getting good at this." Eric grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Practice makes perfect, right?" Lisa laughed. "Keep it up. You're proving a lot of people wrong, and that's no small thing." As she walked away, Eric felt a deep sense of gratitude. He wasn't the same person he'd been months ago, and he owed much of his growth to the courage and resilience of people like Marcus and Lisa. They had taught him that change was possible, even in the face of adversity. Years later, Lincoln Park remained a symbol of hope and healing. Children laughed as they swung higher and higher, their parents chatting nearby. Couples strolled hand in hand, and seniors relaxed on benches, enjoying the sunshine. In the heart of the park stood a plaque commemorating the efforts of those who had worked to transform it into a place of unity. Eric visited the park often, sometimes alone and sometimes with Jamal or other friends he'd made along the way. Each time he paused to read the plaque, which bore a simple message: "Change begins with understanding." Standing there, Eric reflected on how far he'd come and how much farther he still had to go. But he wasn't afraid anymore. With every step, he was building a better future, not just for himself, but for everyone.